Hey everyone, my name's Ken Gordon. I'm the Executive Director of the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research. I want to thank you so much for joining us here for this, our second virtual gala. And what we're going to do is promise to keep this short and sweet because we know that your evenings are precious. And so we aim to have this whole thing done inside about 45 minutes. Joining me beside me is my darling wife, Jean Brandon, and she's going to be doing some help with the keeping the chat going through the evening. So my job tonight is to do some housekeeping. There's also one controversial issue I need to talk about, and so I'll talk about that just very briefly, so we'll get that on the table. And then talk about also how we can put some energy into a gala where normally would be in a ballroom and would be eating and drinking and playing wine toss, and obviously we can't do any of those things in this format. So we'll talk about how we can get some energy into this event. So just in terms of housekeeping, again, thank you for being here. And as I said, we're going to be about 45 minutes. My first degree, I majored in psychology, and on the picture on your right-hand side shows Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, self-actualization down to basic physical needs. And I think the thing we've learned about, you know, our needs under a coronavirus pandemic is that access to good Wi-Fi and access to internet is also a fundamental need if we want to be able to communicate in this kind of environment. So if you have connection problems, most people haven't, then the best thing to do is log off and log on again. If you get really stuck, call that number 206-595-2450 and hopefully we'll be able to help you get online. In case you have a complete fail, you know, if the Wi-Fi just doesn't help your Maslow needs, we're recording this event and we'll be sending out a recording of this event to you sometime tomorrow, so you'll be able to see it, and, you know, and it's going to be really, really great bedtime viewing, especially if you're having trouble sleeping. And as you can see, we'll be using the chat box to try and keep you engaged in the evening. So if anything happens during the night, talk about it in the chat, because that's a great way of staying engaged. So the controversial issue, tomato, tomato. Our official legal name is the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research Incorporated. And that comes in at 21 syllables. And I know, because I answer the phone and I use that term all the time, you can spend half the day just saying our name. And because it's so long, there are a number of abbreviations which are used for our name. And you'll hear people tonight using some of these abbreviations, and some of them are acceptable. The ones I've got here are all acceptable. It really doesn't matter. We answer to any name. You know, hey you works pretty well. My preferred name, shortened name for us, is NWABR, which comes in at just 7 syllables. You'll hear a number of people say NWABR, which is shorter to it, 3 syllables. And I can't do it, but some people somehow crunch us into 2 syllables and it comes out something like NWABR. So that's the controversial issue. We've got a funny name. And honestly, we spent 31 years trying to figure out how to make our name better, because what we really should be is the Northwest Association for Biomedical and Social and Behavioural Research, but that's even stupidly longer. So how do we get the energy of the gala? So firstly, if you're lucky enough to have one of our thanks research masks, they look like this, then take a selfie of your mask and either text it to me at that number 206-595-2450 I shared earlier, or email it to me and any of the communications you've had from me, because we love seeing you with pictures of these masks on. If you're not lucky enough to have one of these masks, then if you give a donation tonight, then you'll get one of these sent to you as our way of saying thank you to you. And, you know, and if anything you see tonight makes you feel moved or excited or passionate or angry, put it in the chat box, because that way we get some engagement with the gala. So now it's time to really get the program underway. And our first speaker tonight is going to be Dr. Sally Thompson-Iritani. And you can see Sally's got a long list of qualifications after her name. The most important thing for tonight is that she is the president of the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research. She's also a long-term board member. I was having a discussion with her about how long she's been on the board, and we think a minimum of 10, maybe 14 years. So nearly half of NWABR's life, Sally has been on the board. And in her day job, she's the Assistant Vice Provost for Animal Operations at the University of Washington. So I'm just going to play with a button and you're going to see Sally. So hopefully that will come.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second annual virtual gala for the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research. I hope that many of you are able to gather with friends or colleagues, either outside or in small groups, or if you're joining us just virtually, gathering via the online platform here, that's fantastic also. But we really welcome you and thank you for joining us. So this time last year, we held our first virtual event, and you may recall that at that event, we recognized our local researchers and community members who had been impacted by type 1 diabetes. It was a quite impactful evening because we got to hear from the researchers who were developing cutting-edge therapies and from some of the patients who've been impacted by type 1 diabetes. It was quite impactful. So for those of you that were able to join us last year, thank you. And we're glad that if you were able to join us again, or if this is your first time joining us, we're obviously glad to have you here for that also. So last year, at that time, we had no idea how long this pandemic was going to last. And we hoped by this stage in 2021, we would be moving on to our new normal. But it is clear now that the twin challenges of the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter movement mean that the old normal will not return. I don't think we're necessarily sad about that. I think we're all see this as an incredible opportunity to look for improvements and that new normal that we're going to work towards. So we need to recognize that and figure out what the work ahead of us is going to look like. And it's going to be hard work. That's the one thing we know. The significant impact that the loss of lives and well-being has had in our communities is more visible and apparent than it has ever been. There are also more people that understand what a vaccine is. How does it work? What does it do? What is it made of? How safe are they? There's more people talking about this than ever before, and there's also more people understanding what healthcare equity looks like in our communities. And how are we going to make sure that everyone has access to really strong health care? Science and our health is part of everyday conversations. Who would have known we'd be talking about vaccines at our dinner table, how they're made, which one should you take, and all of those very important, interesting conversations that we've been able to have. So the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research is a nonprofit membership association that has managed to steer an effective course and has responded to these twin challenges noted with resources, education, peer learnings, and sharing of information and best practices. They've been there for us. No one in our lifetime has had to deal with such overridingly important, pressing, necessary, and urgent challenges. So it is my belief that the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research has come through these twin imperatives stronger, and that we in turn have helped the biomedical research community manage more effectively through this time. So in tonight's virtual event, we are going to limit ourselves to doing just three things we want to accomplish in the just under an hour, trying to keep it as quick as possible and let you get back to what you need to do. We know how hectic and crazy your lives are and how hectic and crazy your evenings are. So the three things we will do, first thing, Ken Gordon, our executive director, will report to you formally, but not boringly, we promise, on the year that has just passed. Greg Yondel is one of Northwest Association for Biomedical Research's 2 vice presidents, and he will introduce our guest tonight, Congresswoman Susan Delbene, who will be receiving the Alvin J. Thompson Award on behalf of the entire biomedical research community in the Northwest. Following Greg's introduction, Congresswoman Delbene will receive this award, and we will share a photo montage of Northwest researchers and research institutions being celebrated and thanked for all of their amazing efforts. Then the third thing, our second vice president, Dr. Aaron Putsky, will then ask you all to consider making a donation to the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research. The board members of NWABR have already committed over $20,000 of their own money to NWABR this year. We want you all to match us. Tonight, we will be asking you the members of our incredibly supportive research community to add your contributions. Funds will support the ongoing outreach work that NWABR undertakes aimed at both raising the profile of and support for biomedical research in the Northwest. So, before I pass the baton to Ken to highlight NWABR's year, I just want to share a few very, very sincere thank yous. So, first off, I want to acknowledge all of you for being here. Thank you so much for joining us for our annual celebration of research. So I also want to add my personal thanks to Congresswoman Delbini for joining us and making the time to join in the celebration of research in the Northwest. And we would not be here without our sponsors. So I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsors, Advara, WCG, IRB, and Pharma. Thank you for sponsoring this event. The board, which now consists of 42 board members, does an amazing job of stewarding our modest resources to make an outsized impact in both the Northwest and also nationally. Those board members also represent some of the most forward-thinking, dedicated, and innovative research organizations that break new ground and create new knowledge literally on a daily basis, sometimes on a minute-by-minute basis. We've been having to move so quickly these days. This new knowledge rebounds to the benefit of science, the benefit of animal health, the benefit of individuals' health, and as we have learned this year, to the benefit of the whole world. We are truly all in this together. So there is no doubt that the contribution of our member organization has been and will continue to be pivotal to our world returning to an improved place post this pandemic, and we all look forward to seeing you then. So it is my great pleasure now to turn it over to the Executive Director of the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research, Ken Gordon. Take it away, Ken.
Thank you, Sally, for that introduction. And thank you for your leadership, both at NWABR, but also within the broader biomedical research community, both here in the Pacific Northwest, but also throughout the country. As I reflect on the year that's just gone, I have two clear and conflicting feelings. One is an overwhelming sense of loss. Just here in the United States of America, over 600,000 people have died as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And when you think about the world, you can add millions and millions and millions of people to the people who have died as a result of this pandemic. These lives represent our parents, our children, our friends, our loved ones. And of course, the vast majority of those people to each of us are probably strangers. But even though they are strangers, those lives represent lost hope, lost opportunity, lost connections. These lives represent a loss at a level that none of us have experienced in our lifetimes. We also have the ongoing loss, the loss that the COVID long haulers are experiencing, and the emergent loss as we discover more and more side effects of this horrible, horrible disease. Added on to all of this loss is the normal losses that we experience in our lifetimes, the passings and illnesses that we all have to contend with. I spoke about my mum at the last gala, and in October last year, she passed away from Alzheimer's. My brother-in-law, who I didn't speak about last year, passed away totally unexpected also during this last several months. And these losses on top of everything else seem to me, and they feel overwhelming. We then have the losses that link back to aspects of how this country was founded, which have brought forward challenges that we all need to face as we consider how to deal with equity, inclusion, and race in this new emerging world that we're seeing. And I think we've all too often been guilty of not working through how our complicated pasts directly inform and then drive inequities in our present. And lastly, for me, there has been a loss of decorum in public discourse. There used to be a time, and I can remember this in my lifetime, when people with two opposing views could come together and could sit down and listen to each other, debate things, maybe even agree some facts that they believe in, both of them believe in, And even if they don't agree with each other at the end of that debate, at least they will understand where the other person is coming from. It seems to me that our ability to have such debates now has been completely lost. And of course, in science, we depend on that kind of discourse, that kind of decorum that comes in when we argue about heated topics, where we agree some common understanding, we agree some core facts. And from those core facts, we develop theories. And as we understand facts better, or as new facts emerge, we revise our theories. That's the lingua franca of how science works. And it seems that in our current, political discourse, it's becoming harder and harder and harder to actually be a scientist who actually does science without having to think all the time about how this might play into politics. And so I deeply regret that loss. So at the start of this virtual gala, aimed at celebrating science, I lead off with an overwhelming sense of loss. And I think it's a loss that we all feel. As I said, it's overwhelming. It affects who we are and it affects what we do. But that said, notwithstanding this overwhelming sense of loss, I still come to you as someone who is incredibly proud about the Northwest Association for Biomedical Research, NWABR, NWABR. And I'm also someone who's incredibly proud of all of our member organisations, as they have responded to all the challenges I just outlined and have faced up to them during the last year. And I am so, so proud of biomedical research. To the extent that we can ever return to normal, whatever that new normal might be, it will be completely thanks to biomedical research, as they have tackled this awful disease and they have found ways to defeat it. So my first feeling is one of overwhelming loss, and my second feeling is one of hope. Biomedical research has got this disease on the run. Science is working. If we follow the research and we follow the science, then we will have this disease under control. And hopefully we'll have it under control before a new variant pops up that further tests the protections that have been devised thus far. So to our year at NWABR. I've been thinking of ways of how to report to you about what NWABR has been doing during this year of lockdown. And it was, as with many of you, the pandemic has really impacted how we do things, but it hasn't really changed what we do. So our first client is always our member organisations. So between the last gala and this one, we've held 6 virtual conferences. And I'm sharing with you, and you should be able to see them on the screen as I'm talking, the cover slides from 67 different presentations that were made during these conferences during this pandemic. And I can see so many trends in these presentations. Initially, we were looking at building an understanding of this disease. Then as the pandemic carried on, we had presentations about how to care for and manage staff in this incredibly difficult time. With the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, we started to see presentations that challenged our practices in research and which also looked to share strategies to improve those practices. As the pandemic continued, we had presentations that were looking at the next steps. How can we leverage what we have learned to improve research? And maybe even looking at things like next-gen vaccines that can maybe control future variants of the coronavirus, but also future pandemic diseases. Cutting across all of these conferences has been NWABR's campaign to #ThanksResearch. During this pandemic, opportunistic actors took the time of this time of immense conflict and tension in the world to double down on strategies that we consider to be profoundly anti-science. Anti-vaxxers, conspiracy theorists, animal extremists have all done their best to shutter research during this difficult time. I cannot help but think that many of them have been driven by a sense of pure evil as they've tried to stop people getting treatments and cures that are so important at this time. In response, NWABR has run a positive campaign to get clear, fact-based and accessible information out to the public about the importance of science. This fact-based pro-science and pro-research messaging got to 185,000 people in just July and August this year. We believe that the public is hungry to learn from you all about what you all do. In addition to the social media campaigns, NWABR has worked with legislators to help them understand the value of research and to also assist them with messaging what we're doing to the public. United States Congresswoman Susan Delbene took this messaging and introduced a thanks research resolution to Congress last year. NWABR has also been involved in numerous media appearances, community briefings, and other opportunities to share contributions of research to ending this pandemic. Lastly, we've kept our focus on building our Research Ambassador program. Research ambassadors are people who can take some of the tools and the other mechanisms that we've developed and can take these out to the public and give clear and accessible information to the public about science and about research. A number of our research ambassadors this year, for example, participated in our virtual summer science camps held during July. And I think we generated something like 300 hours of instruction time to the students who came to these camps on a diverse range of research topics. Ultimately, we see our research ambassadors as the most vital lever for building trust in the work of research. It's a well-known truism that all politics are personal. You don't win people's hearts with slick advertising campaigns or a barrage of data. You win hearts and minds one person at a time. One research ambassador connecting with one member of the public about why they support research. This is a long-term ground game that NWABR has been investing in for years. And we're seeing changes with individuals and organizations and members of the public taking on this challenge of how to communicate the benefits of ethically conducted biomedical research. I want to thank you all for all of your support for over 31 years that the NWABR has been in operation. We genuinely could not do this without you. This is a shared endeavor. Often we say it takes a village, and at NWABR we're very aware that all of our work is a village collaboration. I would now like to hand over to Greg Yandel. Greg is one of NWABR's 2 vice presidents, and he'll be presenting the Alvin J. Thompson Award. Greg is the Director of Research Finance at Providence. So Greg, over to you.
Thank you, Ken. Each year, the board of NWABR traditionally presents the Alvin J. Thompson Award to a researcher who excelled in research, teaching, ethical conduct, and the building of public trust for their work. There have been a few years when the board has presented this award to more than one researcher. But in 2021, we are taking the highly unusual step of presenting this award to the entire Northwest biomedical research community. We are taking this unusual step because we have been completely blown away as to how every part of the biomedical research community has responded to the pandemic. By some measures, over 1/3 of our regional research effort was pivoted to COVID-19. These are folks who are directly involved in understanding the pandemic, building prevention strategies, researching treatments, and vaccines. Much of this work is still going on, with just one example being research on next-gen vaccines that will be more effective at controlling this and future pandemics. The research response has also involved pausing projects to allow for the reallocation of scarce PPE and other vital lab resources. Research was also paused as new protocols were developed to ensure that both research staff and research subjects could be kept safe. Finally, the pandemic and the racial equity challenges that Ken noted earlier provided an opportunity for research to start to consider how it could be better in the future. We cannot think of any area of research that has not been either directly or indirectly impacted this year. Hence, we are awarding the Alvin J. Thompson Award to the entire Pacific Northwest research community. That decision then led to a conundrum. In a virtual gala, we needed someone who could receive this award on the community's behalf. We are incredibly grateful that United States Congresswoman Susan Delbene has agreed to receive this award on your behalf. Congresswoman Delbene is a true champion of research. Congresswoman Delbene represents Washington's 1st congressional district, which spans from northeast King County to the Canadian border and includes parts of King, Snohomish, Skagit, and Whatcom counties. First sworn into the House of Representatives in November 2012, Congresswoman Delbene brings a unique voice to the nation's capital. She started her career in immunology research before spending more than 2 decades as a successful entrepreneur and business leader. Congresswoman Delbene currently serves as the Vice Chair on the House Ways and Means Committee, which is at the forefront of debate on healthcare reform, and chairs the moderate New Democrat coalition. Some of Congresswoman Delbene's priorities in Congress include making sure that every American has the opportunity to succeed and is treated fairly in society, preserving our future by taking on issues around climate change, data privacy, and rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, ensuring that all Americans have access to quality healthcare at an affordable price. Her accomplishments include fighting for resources for the public health response to COVID-19 since the beginning of the crisis, and making sure state and local governments continue to pay police, firefighters, teachers, and other essential workers. In 2020, Congresswoman Delbene also introduced a resolution to the House of Representatives to thank research and researchers for all of their efforts during the pandemic. The board of NWABR can think of no better person than Congresswoman Susan Delbene to receive this award on behalf of our community. Congresswoman Delbene.
Hi, everyone. The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken our world and our way of life for over a year now. It's called on every American to step up and support our communities in ways big and small. The biomedical research community has played an instrumental role in first identifying and responding to this threat and to developing ways to help us treat and prevent COVID-19. You've amazed us by what you've been able to accomplish in such a short period of time under challenging conditions. Innovators and researchers like you are the reason that our country has delivered COVID-19 vaccines in record time to address this deadly virus. Before the COVID-19 vaccines, the fastest vaccine ever developed was for the mumps, and that took 4 years to reach the market. And solutions like these are saving thousands of lives here in the US and around the world. These vaccines and therapies are also easing concerns, giving people hope, and allowing us to begin building back our lives. Last year, I introduced a resolution to honor the incredible patriotic work of American biomedical researchers during the pandemic. But this work didn't begin in early 2020, and no one person or lab or company can say that they did this alone. The research that went into these vaccines was built upon decades of studies and contributions from biomedical researchers across the country, like our community here in the Pacific Northwest. We cannot understate this feat and all of your efforts to support a strong national COVID-19 response. I started my career in immunology, and it was during that time that I experienced the work happening behind the scenes, and I've kept an appreciation for all that you do since then. Not all the breakthrough treatments, therapies, and research get the national attention that the COVID-19 vaccines have garnered. Many Americans are unaware of the forethought and years of work going into the treatments and strategies that will help us mitigate the consequences of the next pandemic and improve the quality of life for people in the future. Today's event allows us to celebrate the work that millions of people have benefited from already and will undoubtedly in the future. With that, it is my honor and privilege to accept the Alvin J. Thompson Award on behalf of the entire Pacific Northwest biomedical research community this year. We're indebted to your tireless efforts during the pandemic and your ongoing commitment to advancing the field of biomedical research. Congratulations on this great and very well-deserved honor, and I hope that you enjoy the event. Please, take care.
thank you, Congresswoman Del Bene, for all the work that you have done on these initiatives. My name is Aaron Putsky, and like Greg Yondel, who you met earlier, I am a Vice President for NWABR. I work at Whitworth University in Spokane, Washington, where I am a professor of biology and a researcher. Now is the time in the evening when we ask for your support with a donation to NWABR. In a moment, a little button will pop up on your screen, and if you click it, it will take you to NWABR's #ThanksResearch giving page. We want you to know that an investment in NWABR is an investment in biomedical research. As you heard from Ken earlier in the evening, NWABR knows and focuses on the fact that public trust in research is absolutely essential. And we do this in three main ways. One, we know that public trust in research is a key ingredient in really all that we do. In fact, public trust in research is what has brought over 190 million people to vaccination sites across the country over the last 10 months or so. Secondly, an investment in NWABR is an investment in broadening diversity in science. You know, scientific research has to look like the communities that it works with. And NWABR sees one of its roles as bringing career and educational opportunities to those who may not have considered a career in science before. We know that this is especially important for younger students who need to see more women and people of color in research and leadership positions. And third, an investment in NWABR is an investment in more accountability and increased transparency in research. People trust when they know what is going on, and when they know that a person, organization, or system is open and humble to receiving and responding to critical feedback. So please click that little button and make a donation to NWABR today. We're going to pause for a moment to give you a little time to click if you choose to do so. We would be very grateful. And when we come back, NWABR's engagement manager, Jen Wroblewski, will join us to help us wrap up tonight's celebration. But before I go, I want to thank everyone at NWABR and all of you for the hard work that you do in helping to move biomedical research forward in an ethical manner. Thank you and good evening.
Aaron, thank you so much for doing this pitch for NWABR tonight. It's my role to wrap up this evening with some thank yous and one final ask. I'd love to acknowledge our evening sponsors, Advara, WCGIRB, and Pharma. Their support means that everything raised this evening will go to support NWABR's programs that build public trust. I'd also like to acknowledge our awardee, the entire Pacific Northwest research community. I'd also particularly like to thank Congresswoman Susan Del Bene for accepting the award on their behalf. I'd also like to acknowledge NWABR's board members who personally contributed in excess of $20,000 in advance of this evening to support our programming. I'd also like to acknowledge their incredible time and expertise that they give as board members. I'd also like to sincerely thank all of you for sharing your Thursday evening with us. You walk the walk, and this year you have done so incredibly. Thank you. This brings me to our last request. We all need to talk more about biomedical research. So build the conversation with your neighbors and your family and friends. Build it on your social media feeds. If you see a story or article that you think is interesting, that catches your eye, maybe it's about a breakthrough in research, maybe it's a general human interest story. Anything that can increase conversation about biomedical research, please share it on your social media feed. And when you do, use the hashtag #ThanksResearch. We know the public wants to hear from you. And by doing so, you'll be further supporting our cause of increasing public support and public trust in this truly awesome endeavor. Thank you so much again, and we hope that you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night.
You couldn't get away without seeing me one more time. So again, I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight. I've just shared my contact details, and I've also got on the slide Jen Robleski's contact details. As I said at the beginning, we're going to send everyone who made a donation a thanks research mask to say thank you for the donations, and a whole bunch of donations have come through, so that's really exciting for us. But we're actually going to send out to everyone who's registered for the event a mask, because we think there's such a great way to get the message out about the work that we do. Because we genuinely believe that we need to have conversations with people about our work, because people don't understand what we do. And so I have shown this campfire picture before, but we need to be talking about our work and being open about what we do great and some of the areas we need to improve. And that's the way that we build trust in our work. So I hope you do have a really great rest of the evening. And as promised, I've got you done and dusted by 6:45 p.m. So thanks, everyone. Have a great night. And we'll see you next year, hopefully in person. Good night.
Good night.